The attorneys will appear 2 weeks hence to discuss a new trial date. The defendant's bail will be continued.
Is there something wrong?
Law and Order, the original series, is a groundbreaking American television show aired in 1990. The crime procedural Law and Order became a massive success, enjoying an impressive 20-season run and multiple reruns. That success was well-earned, as the show was a ratings powerhouse in its early years and is considered to be partially responsible for the slew of procedural dramas that followed. However, like any long-running successful series, there are many behind-the-scenes details and weird facts about its creation. Here are 20 weird facts you didn't know about Law and Order. Number 20. Law and Order was filmed in New York City. When Law and Order premiered in 1990, television crime dramas had a pattern. Most claimed to occur in New York, Chicago, or Boston, but were filmed in Los Angeles sound stages. This was because filming in Los Angeles was cheaper, more predictable, and more manageable to control. But creator Dick Wolf wasn't interested in easy. He wanted to shoot the series in real New York so that the show could portray the city's grit, unpredictability, and personality. That meant shooting in the actual city using real courthouses, police precincts, and streets. If there's a courtroom scene in the script, they didn't build a fake one. Instead, they went to a real Manhattan courtroom and filmed 3. If detectives chased a suspect, it wasn't through a backlot alley. The scene was filmed in a real Lower East Side street with honking taxis, curious pedestrians, and the occasional siren from an unrelated emergency. This commitment to authenticity came with many challenges. First, shooting in a bustling city meant dealing with weather extremes. Actors had to shoot whether it was a hot day in August or during winter. It also meant they had to pause filming for noisy subway trains or reroute scenes when unexpected construction emerged. But those inconveniences brought an unmistakable realism that audiences could feel. New York became the perfect setting and an uncredited star of the series. The environment inspired the legal battles, and its constant energy matched the urgency of the show's storytelling. The show's presence boosted the Los Angeles film industry and influenced TV dramas to embrace real locations. Number 19. The famous dun-dun. Sound was a creative experiment. If you've ever watched Law and Order, you know the dun-dun sound effect, officially called the clang. The sound is so short you might think it's just a quick sound effect thrown in during editing. Many fans also assumed it was a judge's gavel echoing in a courtroom, but the truth is far stranger. The sound wasn't recorded in a courtroom, nor was it edited. It was created entirely in a studio by composer Mike Post. Mike Post wanted something short, sharp, and dramatic to signal scene changes. To get it right, he didn't use just one recording. He achieved the dun-dun audio by combining different sounds: the slam of a jail's door, the bang of a judge's gavel, a bass drum hit, and some unusual percussion effects to add weight, all rolled into one. Some accounts even mention him blending ambient sounds from large spaces to create that echo that followed the sound. The key was balance. Too sharp, and it would be jarring. Too soft, and it would fade into the background. So Post spent hours layering effects until he landed on the perfect, haunting tone. The final sound is officially known in production notes as the clang, though fans worldwide call it simply dun-dun. But here's the surprising part. It almost didn't make it into the final cut. Early edits used a simple fade between scenes with no sound effect, but Dick Wolf felt something was missing. He wanted a cue that told the audience another scene was coming up. But after Post created the sound, NBC executives were unsure if the sound fit the serious tone of the series. Some thought it was distracting, while others felt it gave the show a unique rhythm. Dick Wolf fought to keep it. He argued that the sound created a psychological full stop between scenes and signaled to viewers that a significant shift in the case had occurred. Without it, the transitions felt flat and lacked the dramatic punch the show needed. Wolf won the argument, and the dun-dun sound debuted with the first episode in 1990. Over time, the sound became as famous as the show's theme song. It's so recognizable that NBC once trademarked it to stop other productions from using something similar. It's even been parodied in commercials, cartoons, comedy sketches, and life events. Mike Post later revealed that he earned royalties every time the sound played. He made money off it hundreds of times per episode across the franchise's many seasons. Today, it's estimated that the Dun-Dun has been heard over 10,000 times across Law & Order and its spin-offs. It's hard to imagine Law & Order without that two-note hit. Number 18. Stephen Zern-Kilton is the voice behind the opening narration. Every Law & Order episode begins with the unforgettable line, "In the criminal justice system, the people are represented by two separate yet equally important groups, the police who investigate crime and the district attorneys who prosecute the offenders. These are their stories." Stephen Zern-Kilton narrated this line. Interestingly, Zern-Kilton wasn't hired for narration at first. He had a small on-screen role in the pilot as one of the FBI surveillance technicians conducting covert surveillance of a restaurant where corrupt politicians are dining. He has one line of dialogue, "Look at that. Do you believe these guys?" The actual title of his role in the script was Detective, but producers were struck by his deep, steady tone and asked him to record the opening. That simple choice became one of the show's most enduring trademarks. No matter how often the cast rotated or how many seasons passed, his voice was always used for the opening narration of the series. For many viewers, it's the unofficial cue that the case is about to begin. Zern-Kilton has gone on to narrate every episode of the original series, plus several spin-offs including Law & Order, Special Victims Unit, Law & Order, Criminal Intent, Law & Order, Trial by Jury, Law & Order, Los Angeles, and Law & Order, Organized Crime. This means his voice is in all opening themes of the 6 Law & Order franchise series, but Trial by Jury was the only show where Steve received a credit for his opening narration. It's a rare gig in television because it's tied to a specific style. The delivery is matter-of-fact, almost cold, which fits perfectly with the show's just the facts approach. Fans who meet Zern-Kilton often request he say the opening line in person, and of course he does that flawlessly from memory. His voice has become part of the Law & Order brand, recognizable even to people who may never have watched a full episode. The faces of the series changed as well as the cases, but that voice has been used since day one. Number 17. The show had a 2-in-1 storyline. Unlike other crime dramas, Law & Order had a unique structure. For the 1 hour of screen time it had per time, it essentially told 2 different stories. The first half focused on the police investigation when the detectives chased leads, questioning witnesses, and piecing together the crime. In the second half, the story shifts to the prosecutors to show how the case played out. Splitting a story into 2 structures wasn't common on TV then. Most crime dramas focused heavily on the investigation and sometimes ended with the suspect's arrest. The courtroom dramas inside the real legal world were often not portrayed. Law & Order blended to show that arrest and prosecution were the complete procedure of enforcing justice. It was a risky choice. Network executives worried viewers might not watch the episode to the end when the focus changed from street action to legal arguments. Surprisingly, the opposite happened. The audience got hooked by seeing how the evidence held up under legal scrutiny and prosecution. This format also allowed the show to highlight 2 different perspectives. It showed the risky and unpredictable work of police officers and the strategic, often political challenges prosecutors face. Each half of the episode had its own pace and tone, yet they fit together seamlessly. The 2 shows in one approach became a franchise trademark. It gave writers more storytelling range and allowed for richer character development on both sides of the justice system. Many fans say it's the reason the show never felt repetitive. Every episode gave you the chase, the trial, the clue hunting, and the final judgment. It's a storytelling style that turned out so effective that other series have tried to copy it, but none have matched the balance that Law & Order perfected. Number 16. The cast was constantly changed on the show. Since Law & Order aired in 1990, it has undergone numerous cast changes, making it challenging for viewers to invest in the series or the characters. The series became known for often replacing the prominent cast members, sometimes even when it was still mid-season. Most of the detectives, prosecutors, and even district attorneys were replaced or rotated to other roles within the run of the show. For example, Chris Noth's detective Mike Logan was replaced by Benjamin Bratt's detective Ray Curtis. who Jesse Martin's detective Ed Green later succeeded. On the legal side, Michael Moriarty's Ben Stone was replaced by Sam Waterston's Jack McCoy, one of the most iconic TV prosecutors ever. It's also not uncommon to see an actor playing multiple characters in the Law & Order universe. S. Epitha Merkerson is known for her role as Lieutenant Anita Van Buren on Law & Order, but the actress first played a mother whose son is shot in Season 1 in 1991. She returned in 1993 to take on the role of Van Buren. Likewise, Peter Scanavino is known in the Special Victims Unit universe as Detective Dominic Carisi, but he also played a janitor earlier in the series. Diane Neal played Assistant District Attorney Casey Novak, but she first appeared in the series as an accused murderer. These changes weren't always planned. Several factors contribute to this. Sometimes the actors left for film roles, some over contract disputes, some due to scheduling conflicts, burnout, or a desire to pursue other projects. But in other cases, the production team intentionally wrote off characters or brought in new ones to freshen up the storylines. The versatility of the crew made the series fresh. New faces meant new dynamics, tensions, and ways to tell stories. It also gave the show the grit to exist outside of an actor, since it could go on without them. Over time, the viewers got used to the format and storytelling as much as for any one actor. But sometimes, when a cast member is replaced, fans get disappointed. They feel the constant changes in the main cast were jarring and affected the show's dynamic. Popular characters like Rollins or detectives in the original Law & Order, editing the series during mid-seasons, were particularly noticeable. It made it challenging for viewers to invest in the series or the characters, as their stories and relationships with other characters were a significant part of the show's appeal. Number 15. Jerry Orbach filmed his first scene while still on another show. Jerry Orbach joined Law & Order as Detective Lenny Briscoe in Season 3. It was a seamless transition for viewers, but many didn't know that his first day was unusual behind the scenes. When Orbach joined Law & Order, he hadn't left his role as Detective Sonny Grasso on the CBS series The Law and Harry McGraw. This meant his first Law & Order scene was filmed before his official contract was finalized. It happened because the producers needed to quickly introduce Briscoe to replace Detective Phil Serrata, whose exit had already been scripted. The first scene Orbach filmed was a brief introduction scene where Briscoe casually walks in and begins questioning suspects as if he'd been there for years. This sudden replacement worked perfectly because Orbach already had a long history of playing detectives and cops on screen, making him instantly believable in the role. He was also familiar with New York law enforcement and was friends with several NYPD officers. All this helped in the new role as he didn't need much practice to blend in. What's fascinating is that this quick, almost improvised debut helped shape Briscoe's personality. His relaxed and weary charm wasn't meticulously planned, but came from Orbach's natural style and decades of acting experience. When the episode aired, that first scene was so well received by the cast and crew that producers barely adjusted his character in later scripts. Over the next 12 years, Lenny Briscoe became one of the most beloved TV detectives ever. Orbach's rushed and unconventional start was one of the most successful cast additions in the show's history. Number 14. The show's courtroom scenes were filmed in a real courthouse. To make Law & Order always feel authentic, the director had to use a real courtroom to film the scenes that involved a courtroom. So the courtroom scenes you saw on your screen weren't shot on a fabricated set. They were filmed in an actual courthouse in New York City. The production team often took permission to use the New York State Supreme Court building in Manhattan for exterior shots. At the same time, interior courtroom scenes were filmed in real functioning courtrooms during off hours. This is why the prosecution scenes in Law & Order are always so real. The wooden benches, the marble columns, and even the worn floors you see carried the genuine marks of years of legal proceedings, something no studio set could perfectly replicate. However, filming in an active courthouse came with so many challenges. The crew had to work around the building's real schedule to film a scene, meaning scenes were sometimes shot late at night or early in the morning to avoid disrupting ongoing cases. According to the actors, the good side was how stepping into a real courtroom instantly put them in character, and enhanced their performances. Because the environment was real, it naturally influenced how they moved, spoke, and interacted. It was real action being caught on camera, and it didn't feel like make-believe. Law and Order's popularity grew, and the courthouse became easily associated with the show. What is a crime drama without a court? Whenever such a scene occurs, fans recognize the exterior and associate it with pursuing justice. The production later replicated a courtroom on set for convenience. But even with that, the show still returned to the real courthouse for specific shots. But how did filming in a real courtroom influence the franchise? Law and Order has been able to stand out from other procedural dramas and get trademarked as an authentic New York City reality show because of its commitment to filming in real locations. For many viewers, those courthouse scenes were a glimpse into the real legal world. Number 13. The franchise had crossover episodes. The Law and Order universe had one of television's most exciting crossover episodes. In these episodes, characters from different shows in the franchise and sometimes entirely different TV series share the screen. The original Law and Order frequently crossed over with its spin-offs, some of which included Law and Order, Special Victims Unit, and Law and Order, Criminal Intent. These episodes were carefully crafted with storylines that required the combined expertise of detectives and lawyers from multiple jurisdictions. For example, a case might start as a homicide investigation in Law and Order, only to reveal elements of assault that brought in the Special Victims Unit team or uncover criminal patterns that pulled the major case squad from Criminal Intent. Fans loved how the characters interacted in new ways. Some characters who usually operated in separate corners of the franchise were prominent in these crossover episodes. One of the most ambitious crossovers was the three-part storyline that moved across Law and Order, Special Victims Unit, and Criminal Intent, seamlessly linking plots and characters. These events weren't limited to the Law and Order family. Similar crossovers exist even with shows like Homicide, Life on the Street, and the Chicago Police Department. However, from a production standpoint, such episodes were challenging to coordinate because they involved multiple writers' rooms and shooting schedules. However, the stress paid off in ratings spikes and fan excitement. Number 12. Mariska Hargitay is the longest-running cast member of the franchise. Mariska Hargitay, who plays Olivia Benson in the Law and Order Special Victims Unit, is the longest-running primetime drama character in television history. Hargitay studied acting at UCLA before landing her first movie role in 1985's Ghoulies. Her first television job came a year later on the series Downtown. She went on to appear on shows like Baywatch and Seinfeld, but her breakout role came in 1999 when she earned the role of Detective Olivia Benson on NBC's latest Law and Order spin-off. She has been on the series ever since and has solved hundreds of fictional crimes over the past 2 decades. Number 11. NBC was the third network that Law and Order's creators pitched. The show's first episode was shot initially in 1988, with CBS as the intended airing network. Before then, Fox had been considered at one point, then discarded when the network head Barry Diller declared it wasn't a Fox show. That pilot episode, written by Dick Wolf and titled Everybody's Favorite Bagman, was meant to look documentary-style gritty, and so was shot on 16mm film, then blown up to 35mm, which made it look like nothing else on TV. But there were ongoing technical and audio issues, and in the end, CBS didn't pick the pilot up. NBC liked director Dick for his work on Miami Vice and Hill Street Blues, so then network president Brandon Tartikoff ordered 13 episodes of Law & Order for their fall 1990 schedule, 2 years after the pilot was shot. The early near misses only make the show's eventual success more remarkable. Had Fox or CBS followed through, Law & Order might have looked very different or never found its signature voice. Instead, NBC's gamble paid off, launching a series that redefined crime drama for decades. Number 10. The show has a wrong portrayal of the legal system. One of the aspects of the Special Victims Unit of Law and Order that stands out most is the portrayal of the justice system itself. The show often creates the illusion of a perfect system, whether the detectives investigating heinous crimes or the assistant district attorneys pushing for convictions. It's a world where the police believe every victim, where detectives fight tooth and nail to get perpetrators behind bars, and where the courtroom never leaves a question of guilt unanswered. While this is compelling for viewers, it glosses over the very real failures of the justice system, particularly in cases involving sexual assault. Sure, the Special Victims Unit has its share of flawed instances, but let's be real here. The show's portrayal of a near-perfect conviction rate, particularly in cases of abuse, is frankly misleading. In reality, the odds of a sexual assault case ending in conviction are dishearteningly low. According to statistics, only 50 out of every 1,000 assaults reported to the police lead to an arrest, 28 result in a conviction, and just 25 end with the perpetrator serving jail time. Yet in the Dick Wolf universe, the outcome is almost always justice, with the bad guys rarely escaping the full weight of the law. In an era where propaganda is a hotly debated issue, this overly optimistic portrayal of the police and legal system has its pitfalls. Still, it also provides a kind of escapism that women find comforting. Number 9. Law and Order is inspired by real headlines. The Law and Order series starts every episode with the phrase, "ripped from the headlines." But this was not just a catchy slogan, it was the show's creative formula. From the beginning, creator Dick Wolf wanted the series to reflect real-world crime, so the writers drew inspiration from real-life criminal cases covered in TV news and newspapers. Some of those cases were famous, while some were obscure. The team will study a high-profile trial, a controversial verdict, a scandal, or a shocking arrest, and then twist the details enough to create a fresh, fictional story. The legal team for the series ensured that while the stories reflected reality, they never crossed the line into defamation or misrepresentation. They changed the real cases' names, settings, and details to avoid such legal issues, but the story's primary focus often comes directly from reality. The goal wasn't to recreate events exactly, but to use them as a launchpad for original plots. For example, if an episode is based on a high-profile murder case, the writers include a twist in the story that completely changes the outcome. In many fictional instances in the series, a commentary is made on the real-world version. This approach allowed the show to stay timely, reflecting the crimes and controversies audiences read about in the news. The show was also relatable, as viewers could watch an episode and try spotting which real-life crimes had inspired episodes. Some were obvious, like cases involving celebrities or political figures, while others were more minor and local crimes. The format influenced other crime dramas, many using the same based-on-true events style. While Law and Order never claimed to be a documentary, its link to real headlines gave it a gravity that set it apart from other procedurals. Number 8. Subterranean Homeboy Blues was inspired by the subway gunman Bernhard Goetz' Subway Vigilante, and Out of the Half Light was inspired by Tawana Brawley's alleged assault case 625-632.
Would you please stand up, Mrs. Stevens? What's this about?
Marta Stevens, you're under arrest for the murder of Stefan Tanzik.
The second episode of the original Law & Order's first season, Subterranean Homeboy Blues, featured a woman who claims she shot 2 men in a subway car, mirroring the life and crimes of Bernhard Goetz. Goetz fired 4 men in December 1984 while riding a New York City subway car. He claimed the men threatened him and tried to rob him. His actions received both acclaim and criticism as New Yorkers lauded him as a hero for fighting the violence prevalent in the subway. However, others claimed the shooting was racially motivated as the men were African American. Goetz was eventually acquitted of attempted murder and assault, but was convicted of criminal possession of an unlicensed firearm. The 11th episode of Law & Order's first season, Out of the Half Light, a young black girl claims to have been assaulted by white police officers, was inspired by the 1987 Tawana Brawley case. When she was 15, Brawley was found near her family's home in Wappingers Falls, New York, claiming she had been abducted and assaulted by at least 4 white men. She also claimed one of the men carried a badge, but the grand jury found no evidence supporting Brawley's claims, stating there was no medical or forensic evidence that an assault was committed on Tawana Brawley. The case became known as the Tawana Brawley hoax, as many became convinced Brawley lied about the assault. More than 20 years after the case closed, Brawley's mother and stepfather gave an interview to the New York Daily News, defending their daughter and reiterating their belief that the assault happened. Number 7. Former New York Governor Eliot Spitzer became fodder for Excalibur. The 18th episode of Law & Order's 18th season featured a governor taking heat for his involvement in an upscale prostitution ring, which touched close to home for many New Yorkers. Earlier that year, Eliot Spitzer, a former New York State governor, stepped down from office after being identified by federal authorities in 2008 as a client in a high-end prostitution ring. However, federal prosecutors decided not to bring criminal charges against the former governor, saying they couldn't find evidence of public or campaign funds misuse. When the series star Sam Waterston was asked if the show dramatized Spitzer's story, he clarified that the episode diverges sharply from what happened with Spitzer. It was a story about a politician who gets into trouble because of a sexual issue involving prostitution, not directly about Spitzer. In the show, an investigation into New York Governor Shalvoy created a quandary for District Attorney Jack McCoy, whose political fortunes may be tied to Shalvoy's. For Law and Order, the truth has always been on the edge of that fine line. Law and order go in all different directions. However, it raises questions about what's fair, right, and just, which weren't necessarily raised by the original story. Number 6. Montreal Femicide, The Pregnancy Pact, at a Massachusetts high school, and the Casey Anthony trial-inspired cases in Season 10. The first episode of Law & Order's 10th season featured a man who went on a shooting rampage in Central Park, mainly targeting women. The real case that inspired that season was a Montreal resident, Marc Le Pen, who killed 14 women in 1989 when he went on a shooting spree at Montreal's École Polytechnique. He separated the men from the women before shooting the classroom of female engineering students, according to news reports. 14 students died after the shooting. The 6th episode of the 10th season of Law & Order Special Victims Unit, in which the murder of a homeless man led police to a pregnancy pact made between high school girls, mirrored a similar pact made in 2008 between 17 Gloucester High School students. School administrators became suspicious after noticing a higher-than-average number of girls visiting the school health clinic to take pregnancy tests. The oddest detail was that some girls seemed more upset when they weren't pregnant than when they were, school principal Joseph Sullivan told Time magazine. School administrators eventually uncovered the girls' pact to get pregnant at the same time and raise their babies together. Officials also discovered that one of the fathers was a 24-year-old homeless man. During the 10th season of Law & Order Special Victims Unit, the show's 19th episode featured a young mother accused of killing her child so that she could party more. In the real-life version of the crime, Anthony was charged in 2008 for taking the life of her daughter, Kaylee. Police initially became suspicious of Anthony after she waited a month to report Kaylee's disappearance. The television episode mirrored the real-life saga in more ways than one. In both cases, a grandma reported the young girl's disappearance and complained that the mother's car smelled like a dead body, and both the TV mother and Anthony left their daughters with secondary caregivers and then blamed the babysitter for the disappearance. Number 5. In the 12th season, Born Again followed the demise of Candace Elizabeth Newmaker, while Myth of Fingerprints chronicled the crimes of an Oklahoma City forensic scientist. In the 6th episode of Law & Order's 12th season, a therapist is charged with murder when an 11-year-old girl dies during a rebirthing experiment. After being removed from her home, 7-year-old Candace, born Candace Tiara Elmore, was adopted by Jean Elizabeth Newmaker. However, Candace didn't react well to her new environment, and Jean eventually brought her to a therapy session led by Connell Watkins. During therapy, as part of a rebirthing technique, Candace was wrapped in a blanket, which Jean and therapist Julie Ponder sat on while Candace tried to escape. Candace eventually suffocated inside the blanket. Watkins, who denied the demise was her fault, was ultimately convicted of reckless child abuse. During the 7th episode of Law & Order's 12th season, detectives questioned a fingerprint expert's testimony, which ultimately helped convict 2 men. In real life, the work of Oklahoma City forensic scientist Joyce Gilchrist was called into question after a man whose evidence had helped convict was exonerated based on additional DNA testing. After that case, the FBI began investigating Gilchrist's lab and found that in at least 5 cases, there were errors in identification and lab notes were incomplete or inadequate. During her 20 years as a forensic scientist, Gilchrist's evidence helped send 23 people to death row. Number 4, in season 14, Patient Zero chronicled a real-life doctor who infected his former lover with AIDS and the mob scene. In New York inspired Everybody Loves Raimondos.
Oh, come on. When is this gonna stop?
It's just beginning, Doc. Dr. Mark Danforth, you're under arrest for the murder of Gwen George.
During the 3rd episode of Law & Order's 14th season, a carjacking murder investigation reveals a SARS outbreak in the city. The stolen car housed a medical container with the virus. The premise of the episode played out in the real world when, in 1994, Dr. Richard Schmidt infected his former lover, Janice Trahan, with AIDS. After Trahan ended their relationship, Schmidt reportedly took a blood sample from one of his AIDS-infected patients and injected it into Trahan, telling her it was a vitamin B injection. Schmidt was convicted in 1998 after the evidence concluded the infected blood had come from one of his patients. The 20th episode of Law & Order's 14th season featured the murder of a film producer at popular mob eatery Raimondo's. Real-life wise guy Louis Lump Lump shot a man at Harlem mob hotspot Rouse for insulting a woman while she sang at the restaurant. He later detailed the incident for New York Magazine, telling the publication he hadn't meant to shoot the man in the back. Number 3, Who Let the Dogs Out, detailed the demise of a woman who a neighbor's dogs had mauled. The first episode of Law & Order's 12th season, Who Let the Dogs Out, featured a jogger who was mauled to death by a pit bull. In the real-life story, San Francisco-based lacrosse player Diane Whipple was attacked in 2001 by her neighbor's dogs. Bane, a 123-pound English Mastiff and Canary Island cattle dog mix, dragged Whipple down the hallway and lunged for her throat as she tried to enter her apartment. Whipple sustained 77 wounds during the attack. Bane was destroyed at an animal shelter following the attack. Officials couldn't determine whether Hira, the other dog, had been involved in the attack. Number 2, Scorched Earth, chronicled the saga of notorious monetary official Dominique Strauss-Kahn. The season premiere of Law & Order, Special Victims Unit's 13th season, closely followed the Dominique Strauss-Kahn saga that gripped the world last year. In the episode, a maid claimed a prime minister candidate abused her in a hotel room. In real life, hotel maid Nafissatou Diallo alleged that International Monetary Fund Managing Director Dominique Strauss-Kahn abused her. However, Diallo's credibility was shot after reports that she lied to officials. Charges against Strauss-Kahn were eventually dropped in August 2011. Number 1, Remand portrayed the outcome of the bystander effect. In the 10th episode of Law & Order's 6th season, neighbors watch as a woman is abused. Years later, she has to relive her ordeal as new questions about the crime come to light. The episode was inspired by what is now known as the bystander effect, when multiple people witness a crime but assume someone else will take care of it. The psychological principle gained notoriety during the 1964 stabbing of Kitty Genovese. Neighbors watched as a man stabbed Genovese, left her in the street, returned and stabbed her, left her, and came back a third time at 3:35 a.m. to stab her. But they didn't call the police about the incident until 3:50 a.m. Which of these facts surprised you the most? Is there any fact that we've missed? Drop it in the comments below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more updates. Before you go, click the video showing on your screen now.